Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei become a demigod? Part 8. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Nobody likes to wake up early in the morning. Yet Issei, Gasper and Asia are out in the woods behind the clubroom training. I'm hungry and teary-eyed. Gasper complained as he was sitting down on the ground. Issei. Asia called out, getting his attention. Here's the balls. She handed him one of the assortments of balls. Thank you, Asia. He took the ball from her with a smile, only to quickly turn around and hurl the ball at Gasper. An ear-piercing shriek came from Gasper as the ball came close to him, only for him to stop the ball in the air, and only the ball. Asia saw the ball floating in the air. He stopped it. He did, and it's not as close to him as I expected. Issei started to walk over to Gasper as Asia called out. Issei. She said as he looked back. My leg is stuck. She tried to move her left leg as nothing happened. Well, he has more power than he said he had left. Issei saw a bird in the tree line behind Asia frozen in time as well, while others around it were flying. When he looked to see Gasper huddling over, protecting his head while his eyes were focused ahead on the ball and Asia. Gasper. Issei yelled out, snapping him out of his trance as the ball fell to the ground. Sorry. Gasper curled up as he laid on the ground. Issei kneeled next to him once he got to him. You did quite well there. You didn't freeze everything this time, only the ball and Asia's leg. I can barely keep my power in check. I'm just a no-good half-breed. Gasper said as he started to cry. That's what training is for. So far you have made some progress since we dragged you out of your room. Issei lifted Gasper so he was now sitting up as he was still crying. You need to make the best of what you are. You were willing to try to get your power in check, so you need to do the same with things I can't help you with. Issei knew he couldn't solve everything, but there was no problem in trying to. As Gasper stood up, he wiped the dirt off his skirt. I'm ready. He told Issei, not with the best confidence in the world, but it was still some. Any you remember what we all agreed on? Issei asked him, reminding him of a few days ago. We were servants and comrades. Gasper said as his confidence started to rise. With a smile on Issei's face, he spoke again. Good. He placed his hand on Gasper's back. We're done with morning training for now. Gasper had to do a double take on what he just heard as he was expecting to keep training. What? A loud rumbling sound came from Issei's stomach as Asia and Gasper looked at him. I need some fuel. He told them as they cleaned up the remaining equipment that Issei was throwing at Gasper. After school. Everybody had gathered in the clubroom like normal. Gasper was hiding in a box with the lid open, playing some video games. Today was the big day. The three powers of the biblical factions were going to sit down and talk. Of all the places they could have chosen, they decided to hear. Issei spoke out, making idle chit-chat. It makes sense as war was almost started here. Kiba's logic was sound, but Issei wasn't having any of it. This town has its skeletons. His comment caught some of them off guard. Before anybody could question it, the door opened as Riaz and Akeno came through. It's time. Riaz said as everybody but Gasper and Kaneko got up. Riaz walked over to Gasper. Gasper, unfortunately, you're going to stay here, but Kaneko will keep you company for the night. Gasper gave her a nod as she headed out of the door with everybody else in tow. As they were walking across the yard to head to where the conference was taking place, Asia saw all the guards. So many people. She looked on as she saw members of each faction flying around. Tonight is the best chance for peace, and with that the possibility of something happening. So the guards are needed. Riaz explained as she was leading the pack as they reached two large double doors. Knock knock knock. Excuse us. I have returned with my peerage. Riaz called out as she opened one of the doors. As they entered the large room, they saw a large round table with 4 people sitting at the table with another person standing behind each of them. Serzich's Lucifer and Seraphol Leviathan were sitting next to each other with Graphia behind them. The leader of Heaven, Michael, had a person in robes behind him that looked to be on the feminine side. She reached into her hood and pulled out a blonde chunk of hair, followed by another one. As she pushed the hood back, her face was revealed as it was Irina. She smiled and gave a wave to Issei as they were entering the room. Meanwhile, Azazel of the Fallen was surprisingly well dressed as he had Vali behind him. This is my younger sister Riaz Gremory and her family. Serzicha said as he introduced the group to everybody in the group. They were the ones who fought off Kakabiel's assault a couple of nights ago. Graphia motioned to the group to take a seat. Yes, I read the report and I am thankful for the outcome. Michael gave his thanks to Riaz. She smiled and bowed in respect before she took a seat next to Sona, who arrived beforehand. Seeing as the Red Dragon was involved, I was surprised to hear that Kakabiel was alive. Had I not been asked to keep him alive, I would have attempted to kill him. Issei answered him. About that. Sorry. Azazel said as he wasn't too happy about it. Kakabiel was an idiot in the end and caused more trouble than he was worth. Well, now that everyone has arrived, we can officially start this meeting. As agreed upon beforehand, one of the conditions of the meeting. The forbidden subject, that god of the biblical faction, is dead. Issei started the meeting with one of the most important facts. However, one of us has found out about that fact beforehand. Isn't that right, Issei? Issei singled Issei out. That's right. Issei said as Riaz was looking at him. I found out when I was young. And who told you? Mitchell asked him. Issei raised his hand as the gauntlet appeared. Who isn't a fan of destroying more lives than two? The leaders knew and heard of the destructive tendencies the dragons caused. Even more, they all knew the fates of imprisonment. Very well, with that out of the way, we can continue. Issei's attention shifted back to the ongoing meeting. We angels have wished that the three great powers would not travel down a road of destruction. Mitchell said as he knew fighting isn't the answer to their problems. I don't see the problem then. Azazel perked up. I've been staying out of things, waiting on the two of you to get to a point where talking is possible. As the leaders were discussing various issues that started Kakabiel's attack, Issei was the only one not paying attention to anything that was being said. He felt a hand cover his as the fingers started to intertwine with his. When he looked down, he saw Riaz holding his hand, so he closed his hand in response to hers. Bekeno saw their hand holding. Look at the two of you being cute in the middle of an important meeting. She kept a hand over her mouth as she smiled while whispering. Are you going to play under the table foot games as well? Riaz's head snapped to Akeno. I am merely drawing courage from Isis. Riaz said as Akeno saw Issei just sitting there with his goofy smile on his face. Riaz, could you tell us about the events that lead up to the incident? Issei asked as Riaz snapped back to her professional attitude. Yes, Lord Lucifer. She stood up. 2 days before the incident, the exorcist arrived in Kuo. The two of them explained what swords were stolen and wished to retrieve them alone. I would not allow them to be alone in the city, but they refused. After some back and forth, a duel was proposed between the two of them and Kiba and Issei. She continued detailing out the events that lead up to Kakabiel's attack. Each of the leaders all had reacted differently as they heard what had transpired during those days. Seraphil turned around to look at Riaz. Thank you for the report. She said as she put a peace sign over her right eye and sparkle of stars came out. As she looked back at the rest of the table, and for you, Azazel? She asked. Kakabiel was a warmonger who acted of his own accord. He said with a flat tone. Was? Issei asked, beating Michael to the punch. Azazel smiled. He was handed a swift punishment. Kakabiel was given eternity in Cocytus. Vali and I took him for his freezing, and he will never come out again. He pulled a coin out of his pocket and placed it on the table. This should be more than enough proof that the deed was done. Well, we now know of Kakabiel's intentions. Where do you lie? Michael asked, knowing there was more to it. Bores me. Nothing about conquests and bloodshed interests me. Kakabiel failed us and was punished for it. Azazel, if war is boring, then why have you been collecting sacred gear users? Issei needed to know if his actions were war preparations or if they were other motives. At first some of us thought you were preparing to wage a war as you were gathering sacred gears. But yet nothing ever happened, and now you have vanishing under your roof. Mitchell agreed with Issei as gathering that much power can lead to the wrong ideas being passed around. Research? Azazel replied as it was the first thing that had interested him. Research is the main focus at Greiger, with a large amount of it revolved around the wonders of the gears. I'm fine with the way the world turns. We rarely interfere in world politics, nor do we deal with other faction problems unless requested. But yet here we all are, and yet I have the least amount of trust between the three factions. Yes. Everybody said in unison as Azazel felt hurt from them. The three of you may be better than your predecessors, but you have your dark secrets as well. Enough about that. For now, you wanted to make peace, then let's make peace. That is the original intentions of this meeting. Riaz and Sona were both shocked to hear Azazel mention peace. All they were told was this was to discuss the events of Kakabiel. Yes, I did plan to propose a peace agreement with the two of you. The world cannot go on any longer with the three of us at a cold war. With Father and the Satans gone, we can't keep this going any longer. Azazel started laughing at Mitchell's words. You finally came out and admitted it. With Father gone, we the Ceres decided that it would be best to watch over his children and guide them when need be. Humans are no longer the same as they were when I fell. They could barely make fire, now look at them. They have built massive buildings, found ways to fly, and even though they have waged war, they have taken the first steps to the stars. Azazel told Michael, knowing that time has passed in a positive light. Yes, I do agree. Even with our Satans gone, we wish to preserve our race. We devils have taken steps to advance in between our wars. Well, Seraphil and I fought in the last one, and it was not something that we needed as a people. The last thing the supernatural world needs in our three factions in a war ever again. Issei saw the way Azazel had moved the conference in a positive light, and he gladly followed along. Azazel liked to hear what he was hearing. Agreed, the last thing we need to do is destroy ourselves. We may not need to teach humans anymore, but we can learn from some of their ideas. We should never walk down the path of mutually assured destruction, something we all watched as 2 cold wars raged on for longer than they should have. The words that he spoke, everybody felt them. His words flowed to their core, knowing he was right that they had to change. Is that everything? Serziches asked as he wanted to see if there was more to his speech. As Azazel nodded that he had finished, Michiel looked over to Issei Sekiruyute. I believe you wish to speak to me, correct? Issei looked at him. Using the Japanese name because we're in Japan. Never mind that I did want to talk. Well, more or less, I wanted you to explain something. And that would be? I wanted you to explain to Asia why you exiled her. Issei's question brought some questions as to why he would be asking about that. It was something that had to be done, yet none of us wanted to do it. After God died, the only programs that remained were the one that governed sacred gears and divine protection. That system also allows miracles to be performed in mercy. He paused as he said mercy. When God was alive, that system worked flawlessly, and miracles were a common occurrence for believers. Once he died, I was able to salvage the system so exorcism and crosses would still work, but it came with a downside. The downside is that I am not my father, I can only power the system so it works. And unfortunately, we have to keep people who could cause any negative influence on the system away from it. You have been branded a heretic for a crime that should have never happened, and unfortunately, we had to exile you. Was it because of her sacred gear? Issei poked around for more information. Sacred gear can influence anything. Some can destroy the world if they wanted, others can do minor things. 3 of the 4 sacred gears here we know can affect the system. One thing we do not know is if Twilight Healing was able to heal devils and fallen when God was alive. He looked over to Azazel to see if he knew, only to get a shrug out of him. We were never able to study a user of Twilight Healing before the war. Twilight Healing seems to prefer females as the hosts. Azazel informed them. Due to Copiel's actions, it was painful to have to hand down excommunication to you, Zenobia. You served us well, and while the loss of Durandal is an extensive blow to us, it is something that unfortunately that had to be done. Michael lowered his head. I am truly sorry for the events that have transpired. Zenobia shook her head. Please don't apologize. The fact that you reincarnated as a devil is a sin on our part. It is the least I can do. It's fine. Zenobia said. I regretted it at the start, but my life has changed for a positive light. What I grew up in and what I live in now are different things, and they excite me to see where I go. I know other believers will be angry at the choice I have made, but I am happy with my life as it is. Coming to Japan, meeting people and making friends has been an amazing experience. It has been an honor to talk to you, Michael. Asia put her hands together and gave a quick bow. Very well then, thank you, ladies. Zenobia, I will leave Durandal to you as a member of the Grimoire Peerage. With it in your hands, I believe no wrong to come. Azazel leaned forward and put his arms on the table. With that out of the way, I have something to ask. With both of the dragon emperors in the room. Vali, what do you want from the world? A smile crept on Vali's face. If I can fight strong people, I'll be happy. So White desires to fight. So what does Red desire? Azazel pried. Issei looked to his right, seeing Riaz and Akeno. Then when he looked left, Asia and Zenobia. He pointed at them. What do you think? He put his arms around Riaz and Asia. Issei. Riaz hissed at him as she hit his chest with the back of her hand. Ha 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 ha. Azazel bellowed. Red wants women while White wishes to fight. In the end, they want the same thing. Serzic had a small chuckle, and he was promptly smacked in the back of his head by Grafia. Ouch. He rubbed the back of his head. Yep, dude, my blood and sacred gear, all I want to do is have fun with the ladies. Issei said with his trademark goofy smile. Issei, did you forget that Serzich's is her? Kiba tried to point out his perverted behavior. He removed his arm from around Asia. That boat sailed a long time ago, Kiba. Issei said as he leaned over to look at Kiba. However, Kiba's new sword had materialized into his hand and was giving off a holy and demonic aura around the sword. He looked over to see that Irina and Zenobia had their holy swords out as they were making a white glow around the blades. It appears time has stopped for some of us. Michiel said, looking to see who could still move. We are fine because of our powers. Azazel looked around, seeing the swords in Kiba, Zenobia and Irina's hands. The holy demonic and holy swords protected them. He knew Vali was fine and saw Riaz holding Issei's hand. The dragons protected them and Grimoire as well. He tried to tease Riaz as he didn't think she noticed yet. So what's scared? Multiple explosions went off as the building they were in shook. I see. Issei said. For a terrorist attack to happen here was planned for, but this is well thought out so far. Azazel complimented whoever was behind this. He got up from his chair and flung the curtains open from the windows. Bright flashes of light as explosions were going off all across the school. Magicians, and quite a bit of them. That's cool and all, but how did they slip into the school with a company for each faction on guard? Issei pointed out that for such a well-guarded place, they slipped in quite easily. Don't know. Azazel shrugged, but whatever they did they agitated Forbidden Baylor View to stop time over a wide range. Neutralizing that power should be our top priority. Gasper has been taken as part of a terrorist plot. I will not stand by as he is being used. Ria's made her stance. Serzich's put up his hand. Everything is sealed off from magical teleportation, so how exactly do you propose you get there? Ria's thought about how to get into the schoolhouse successfully, then she remembered what else is kept there. I keep my last rook in the building, we could use castling. Azazel turned away from the window and looked at Serzich's. Castling would be a surprise attack from the inside, but does it bypass the Abrahamic locking layers? It can. Serzich's mention. You or I could do it no problem, Ria's would need some help with it. He looked at Grafia. Can you prepare the teleportation to bypass everything and then hand off Grafia? She merely nodded as she got to work. But that out of the way. Azazel looked over to Vali. Go outside and deal with our uninvited guests. Destroy whatever strategy they have planned. Vali nodded as he walked out of the room and was soon outside taking care of the intruders. We're ready. Grafia said as Ria stepped into the magic circle. As Issei followed behind, Azazel called out catch. He threw a metal armband at Issei. When you're done put that around the vampire's arm, it will neutralize his power. Issei gave a nod. Send them. Serzicha said as they disappeared, only for a rook chess piece to fall on the floor. Grafia retrieved the piece and handed it off to Serzich's. So Azazel. He said, getting his attention as he stuffs the rook in his robe. Now that they are away, what is the real reason why you have been collecting sacred gears, especially the Longinus? I'm preparing. He replied as he watched magicians dying at the hands of Vali. Preparing for what? We were about to sign for peace before this happened. Are you preparing for an attack against you? Michael pointed out the flaws in his words. The Cows Brigade. Azazel said. What is this Cows Brigade? Seraphil asked while looking to Serzic as if he knew, only for him to not know as well. Shem has recently informed me of them as he's been watching suspicious activity going around. From the report, they have been gathering dangerous members from all pantheons. Some demigods, but mostly sacred gear users who have attained balance breakers. Some of the members even wield Longinus. And the goals of the group? Michael asked. What else does every nutjob group wants to do? Destruction and mayhem are always groups like that. They even spell chaos with a K. Azazel laid out what he knew. The room lit up in gold as a smaller than normal magic circle appeared next to Kiba. He jumped away circle while pointing his sword at whatever was going to come out. Serziches looked at the circle to see who it was. That magic circle. Out came a tall busty woman with brown hair and purple eyes. Hello, false satans. I think it would be her. Seraphil said. Katarea Leviathan, the last of Leviathan's bloodline. I doubt you are here to render aid with our situation, so why are you here? Serziches asked as Kiba kept his sword pointed at her. The old Mag faction decided it would be in our best interest to assist the Cows Brigade in this little endeavor. Katarea summoned a wood staff with a hook at the top. So it's a coup d'etat then. I knew we shouldn't have listened to the elders all those years ago. Serziches kept his composure up. A sphere of energy appeared in her staff. Chaos and ruin in this world is all we want. The sphere detonated as she slammed the staff on the ground. The explosion destroyed the whole building, leaving scraps of wood and metal all over the area. As the smoke cleared, a bubble appeared with everybody inside of it. The faction leaders decided to work together to save their skin. I take it you're after the whole world? Michael asked as they let down the barrier with everybody inside. Of course, once we have our chaos we can begin a revolution. Katarea pointed her staff at Seraphil. But first I'll start with you, Seraphil. You stole what was mine, and when I walk out of here with your head I will have it back. Seraphil didn't worry about her words, as from the last time they met it wasn't enough. A deep laugh came from Azazel. What are you laughing, Azazel? Katarea barked out as his laugh was ruining her seriousness. Chaos revolutions and executions. He kept laughing. I've heard that millions of times before you got your first training bra. Those words are the same as every villain who has tried. Azazel aura started to flare out, remembers him Michael. Unfortunately. Michael sighed out, remembering the despot he was along with the army he created to rule the ancient world. Katarea, are you going to surrender? Serziches called out. Why would I when you're going to die here tonight? Her power started to ramp up. Azazel walked towards Katarea as he held up his hand. Don't bother, I'll deal with her. He told Serziches as the barrier went up around them once again. Descendant of Leviathan, let's see how well you fare. 12 jet black wings pop out of his back, along with an outward flare of his power that incinerated all the magicians in the air. Before Katarea could respond to his bravado, Azazel had already closed the gap between them. Right as he reached her, he opened up his left hand and swung it at her. While Katarea was expecting to get hit in the face as she didn't see Azazel's swift movement, he smacked her with full force on her breast and ribs, sending her flying into a nearby building. Everyone, I need you to start thinning out the magicians as Graphia works on neutralizing this anti-transfer magic. Kill or subdue them as long as you thin them down. Serziches gave them the order. Michael gave Irina the go-ahead to head out alongside of Kiba and Zenobia. But Issei and Riaz and Issei were walking through the clubhouse as they felt the burst of power from Azazel. Riaz ran to the closest windows that she could see the battlefield from. As she looked out the window she saw Azazel and Katarea fighting in the air. Why is Katarea here? Who's Katarea? Issei asked, not familiar with that name. She is a Leviathan by blood. A small whistle came out from Issei, and here I thought they were all dead. Yes, only a few descendants remain. Riaz took her eyes off the fight as she continued to walk down the hall. I doubt you need it, but promote to queen. Issei did as he was told as they came up to a room with a visible seal on it. Riaz held out her hand and summoned forth a blast of her power of destruction. When she sent it forward and it contacted the barrier seal, it shattered it along with the door. Impossible teleportation was blocked off. How did you get here? One of the hooded magicians yelled out as she pulled out a sword. She pointed the sword at Gasper, who was hanging on the wall next to Kaneko by a magic spell that bound them there. Gasper's eyes were forced open as his sacred gear was won. Tears were streaming out of his eyes. Please kill me, he said as he cried out. Ria's voice was calm and caring as she spoke to Gasper. Don't say things like that, you are my family and I would never abandon you. Shut up, you stupid bitch. You treat a dangerous creature like a normal person. You have to treat the vampire like what he is, a weapon. The leader shouted out as Issei tapped his foot on the ground, creating a small magic circle that they didn't see. The old Mau faction is right, the Gremory family affection turns them into weaklings. So just die. She screamed out as a laser beam came out from her hood. Issei moved the boosted gear in front of her face to block as it created a large amount of smoke. During the smoke cloud, Issei summoned Ascalon and sliced his hand, causing blood to spew out. As the smoke dissipated he swung his hand as the blood spewed out all over, getting on everybody, but most importantly on Gasper's face. Drink. Issei said as the blood was close just enough for his tongue to reach the blood. Gasper's tongue lapped up a small drop of blood. No. The lead magician screamed as his eyes glowed red. She thrusted her sword at Gasper only for his body to break down into a swarm of small black bats with glowing red eyes. Shoot the bats. The leader screamed out as they fired magic beams at every bat that could. None of their blasts could connect as the bats gracefully dodged each and every beam. The glow from the eyes of bats got red and redder as hands came out from the ground and wrapped around all of the magicians. The hands clamped down on them, grabbing everything they could, even their throats. Gasping for air, they struggled to fight back as it was useless. Gasper's power strangled them until they passed out. As the bodies hit the floor one by one, eventually Kaneko was released as the leader passed out. Riaz gave Kaneko a hug, knowing that she was safe as Gasper turned back into his normal appearance. Issei handed Riaz the band that Azazel gave him. She went over to Gasper and attached the band around his arm. Meanwhile, Issei had formed a magic circle with all the magicians in it and activated it. Vines came out from the floor with thorns all down them. The vines wrapped around the girls, binding them up. They were bound with thorns digging into their skin even near their most sensitive places. One of the girls who were already bound woke up and struggled to break them. The thorns dug into her body, drawing blood under her pelvis. She screeched out in pain. Don't bother moving, if you push on them they get tighter, Issei said to her as the last binding finished. When he turned around he saw Riaz looking at him. We are not telling Akeno about that, she said as she turned to head out the door with Kaneko and Gasper following right behind her. When they got outside they saw Azazel and Katarea still fighting. How's your hand? Gasper asked as he was looking at the wound on his hand. Issei looked at his hand. The large gash stopped leaking blood, but it was going to need some form of medical attention. It's not bleeding anymore, so that's good. I'll have Asia fix it up soon. They continued walking towards the rest of the group, who was unfrozen now. So how was my blood? He asked Gasper. It tasted different. He thought about how he hated drinking blood, but had no issue with Issei's. It gave me a well of power, but it's all gone now. Issei placed his hand on Gasper's head. Good to know. He headed over to Asia and showed her the wound on his hand as she got to healing it. Azazel was, however, getting bored with his fight as he pulled out a small golden spear with a purple jewel on the pommel. Katarea looked at the spear. And what is that? Oh, this. Azazel turned the spear down so the jewel was facing up. This is something much more interesting than war. This is my hobby. He raised it above his head. I call it the Downfall Dragon Spear. The jewel started to glow, emitting a purple light. It's an artificial sacred gear I made. Balance break. The purple glow was quickly nullified as Azazel was engulfed in a golden sphere of light. The boosted gear came alive on Issei's hand, with the jewel glowing as everybody watched as Azazel emerged in a set of gold armor with purple jewels all around it. It was almost a match for the Dragon Emperor armors, as Azazel's 12 wings disappeared from his back and a large gold two-headed spear was in his hand. Downfall dragon and other armor. Azazel called out as he stuck his hand out and motioned for Katarea to attack him. She flared her power as black snake-like waves of power rolled off of her. Why is her aura black and snake-like? Riaz asked as she saw the two powers were mixing unevenly. She drank a snake that was given to her from the Ouroboros dragon. Surziches calmly told them about what happened when they were away. Ouroboros, one of the two strongest dragons, has taken his side. How unfortunate. Issei said, knowing who it was. Shame we have to kill Katarea now. He eyed her up, seeing how her clothes heavily emphasized her figure. She isn't bad looking. Katarea felt her skin crawl as she charged at Azazel. As she was nearing him, he thrust the spear at her, shattering her aura, causing her to fall out of the sky for a moment before she regained her ability to fly. When she regained her power, her arms extended out and split into multiple arms with a hand on them. They latched onto Azazel's arm and sank into the armor, fusing with it. The new world is coming and you are going to be its first victim. A vile black power began flowing through the mini arms. Going to kill yourself? Well, I don't plan on being a part of that. Azazel twirled his spear around, sliding it between his arm. With a small twist of the spear, he severed his arm off completely and cleanly as blood poured from the wound. This surprised Katarea at the fact that he would cut off his limb, but for her, that would be her last thought. Azazel twirled the spear around one more time as it glowed and threw it at her, as one point hit her directly in her forehead and the other punctured her throat. The discharge of power from the spear and her spell caused her body to turn to ash. As Katarea was now dead, he dispelled the armor and fashioned a magic circle to stop the bleeding. The purple jewel fell to the ground, but Azazel grabbed it before that. He pulled it near his face. Looks like it needs more work. Fafnir. Azazel's guard was only down for a moment, but that's all it took as he was struck by a white streak of light. His body was sent flying into the ground, creating one of the many craters in the ground. As he crawled out of the hole, he looked and saw Vali clad his white armor. So Vali, are you under the influence of office? Vali let out a laugh as he heard that. I thought this side would be more interesting, so I decided to join them of my own accord. I figured that you paired up with Katarea to take over the world, as neither of you two could become a Satan. Azazel's words ran through the onlookers' heads. Neither? Seraphil asked, what is the meaning of that? Riaz called out to Azazel. My name is Vali Lucifer. He said as 8 massive bat wings popped out of his back, as the wing spawn was larger than the wings of his sacred gear. Great-grandson of Satan himself, born to a human mother. As a child of mixed blood, I obtained the divine dividing. I might as well be a miracle. The wings retracted back into his back. A half-breed. Surziches said that explains why nobody has ever heard of the Lucifer blood beyond Rizavim. He hid the fact that he had a son too well. His human side allows for the growth of the divine dividing, but his devil blood makes it much worse. Of all the hosts over the years, he may be the strongest of all hosts. I did want to fight you, Azazel, but you dispelled your armor. It looks like your toy needs more work and I will have to settle for second best. Vali said as he looked down at Issei. Hi to Issei, you're just a descendant of a non-combat god. Yet even with a boosted gear, your potential is nothing. Issei walked away from the group towards Vali as a sword hilt materialized in his hand. So are you done stating the obvious? I'm well aware of my weaknesses. Out of the hilt, a blade sprang out, silver in nature, yet carried a black hue to it. Michael and Surziches looked at the blade, trying to figure out what divine weapon it was. Now that is a new sword. Azazel knew this was no sword of legends. It doesn't make a difference if you have a fancy sword or not. Destiny is cruel and you can't avoid it. Vali charges up a blast of energy and fired it at Issei. As the blast rained down Issei, he sliced at the blast, cutting it in half. But once a gap was wide enough in the blast tube behind it, Vali had moved down to striking range, slammed his right fist into Issei's face, sending him flying backward into the school. As the dust settled, Issei was not seen emerging from it, only a giant suit of armor. Issei took flight, then charged at Vali, swinging his sword at Vali. Up and down and even diagonal cuts, nothing made contact with Vali's armor. Boost. 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 Rang out as Issei prepared one more swing as Vali stuck his hand out. Divide. A portion of Issei's power was drained as the blade disappeared. All that for nothing. Vali said as he was preparing to divide once more. Crack. A cut appeared on the breastplate of Vali. Tell me again how much of nothing that was. Issei said as Vali punched him in the chest as he fell back to the ground. Vali charged up an energy blast in his hand and pointed it at Asia. You said you fight for your friends. Now choose. Vali fired the blast at Asia as Issei rushed over to guard her against it. When he got in front of her, crossed his arms, tanking the blast. Once the explosion ended, he quickly looked around to see where Vali was. He saw Vali flying down with his hands out trying to grab Ria's. Issei leaped over to tackle him out of the air before he could get his hands on Ria's. Right as Issei tackled Vali he called out, "Do it, drag. Boost. 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 Boost boost. 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 Boost boost. 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 Boost." The calls rang out as his left hand started to glow green. Transfer? What? Riaz looked up to her brother. Why would he do that? The wings coming out of Vali's back glowed blue as it emitted particles of energy. But once the power was transferred to him the particles were able to keep up with the influx of power. Again. Issei called out as a massive amount of power was charged up once again. This time Issei punched Vali in the stomach. Transfer? All the power that was built up was sent right directly into Vali's organs as the divine dividing could no longer fend off the power influx. The armor that was protecting Vali shattered causing him to cough up some blood. One of the orb jewels from Vali's armor was still intact as it rolled on the floor stopping at Issei's foot. Ascalon slid out of Issei's arm as he pointed it at Vali. Blade. That explains how he was able to inflict so much damage with so little power. Be careful Vali, the aura was enough to destroy the balance breaker. If that blade lands a hit it will cause immense damage. Vali stood up wiping the blood from his mouth. Maybe he is worth being my rival. Vali's body was shrouded in white light as his armor reformed. Issei picked up the orb off the ground. Drake, you think it would work? Scared gears work off feeling, so anything is possible. Let's do it then. Issei said as he smashed the jewel on O right hand and dropped in the one that came from Vali. Always wondered what it would be like to take someone else's power. Painful, Drake said as Issei clutched onto his hand as the jewel was emitting light from it. It flashed green and blue back and forth. He is trying to take my power. Vali watched on as Issei was screaming out in pain. We are polar opposites, the only thing you have done is doomed yourself. Hahaha. We are the Red Dragon Emperor, wellspring of power. My partner may be foolish, but he gets results. Let's show them true results. Drake said as Issei held up his right hand as one final blast of light came from it. Vanishing dragon power is taken. No longer was the gauntlet red, but it was a matching white to Vali's armor. Impossible. It ain't fiction, Issei laughed, but opposites attract. He lowered his hand down. Kiba created a sword from holy and demonic energy and a sacred gear. Sacred gears have enough loopholes that people like us to get them. What's to say that we can do the impossible? Vali floated up into the air and spread his arms out. The wings on his back started to flicker as the light started to bend around him. Let's stop playing around then. Half dimension. Everything around them started to bend inwards to a central point. Issei looked around and saw the school collapsing, yet everybody else was fine. He's bending space in the barrier. This is extremely dangerous. Michael watched on as the barrier kept bending. Is he mad? Destroying the space around us will do nothing. Ria said as Azazel stood next to her. All hosts of dragons are mad in one way or another. Vali wants to fight, that's his madness, yet we already know what Issei's is. He gave Riaz a wink hoping she would catch on. Hey Issei. Azazel called out to him as Issei looked back. If that ability halves everything in this space, what happens after space breaks down? Issei knew the answer and replied with haste, it affects us next. Well, your brain is working, that's good. But if it halves us then it will halve Riaz Gremory's breast as well. Azazel watched Issei stop as he was hit in the chest by Riaz with the back of her hand. Issei looked over thinking of all the girls' new sizes and how it would be for them. Riaz would be 49 or 50 if we rounded up. Akeno would be the biggest loss down to 51. Poor Asia would be cute 41 or 42. Zenobia would be a perky 43. Issei was mumbling out loud as Azazel had now lost it as he saw Issei's head spinning in the loss of his favorite thing. Issei looked at Vali. Boost, man, that's fucked up. Issei pointed over to Kaneko. Poor Kaneko is trying her best and you're just going to take away all of her work. Vali was now confused about Issei's ramblings. What? Boost 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 explosion. Azazel and Michael put up a shield around everybody. The power that Issei had generated had scorched the ground, causing fire and burning dirt to be hurled up into the air. Dragon shot. Issei yelled out as a giant blast left him flying up to Vali. But as the blast got closer, it was losing its strength as it came in contact with the area he was dividing. Issei had followed right behind the blast, grabbing onto Vali's shoulder to hold him in place as he slammed his helmet into Vali's, shattering them both wide open. For the Atomiccaa. Issei screamed out as he had a clear path to Vali's face. Issei's fist collided with Vali's jaw as some blood spewed out. Divide. Drake called out as the formerly red now white gauntlet lit up, draining away Vali's power. Issei sent a knee into Vali's left side, hitting his spleen, causing more blood to come up. As the blood splattered over Issei's armor, he delivered one final blow, bringing both of his arms over his head. He balled his hands into fists and slammed them down on Vali back, sending him plummeting into the ground. As Issei landed on the ground, Vali was kneeling while wiping the blood from his mouth. He stood up and looked at Issei as he held his hands in front of his face. Maybe we should go a bit further. Aunt Albion said it's not worth it. It will be fine. Vali armor lit up, glowing all bright-eye, who is about to awaken. A chant was started as his armor reacted to his words. As Vali was preparing the next set of lines, the barrier around the school shattered and dissipated into the light. Vali plans have changed. A new voice came out. A person landed next to him. Biku. He looked over to the man in a modernized version of a traditional Chinese outfit holding onto staff. What's going on? You took too long, now I have to bail you out. HQ is all pissy and wants to move to Plant C. He looked over to see Surziches and Michael as Azazel was now standing next to Issei. And it looks Katarea failed. So the Monkey King is allied with the Cows Brigade. Nah, that can't be Wukong, he too young. Issei told Azazel, plus isn't the power pole red? It's the Rai Jingu Bang, get it right. Biku said as he twirled it and slammed it into the ground. Right, power pole, gotcha. Issei didn't exactly care, he knew the name, but preferred the more iconic version. So not only is the descendant of Lucifer a member of the Cows Brigade, the current Monkey King as well. You may have an impressive force because of that. Azazel watched as a shadow spread under the two of them. I'm not the same as the old man. I live my life the way I want to. Nice to meet the red dragon, see how Vali here looks. Biku laughed a bit as they sank into the shadow, disappearing. But the threat gone, Issei let his armor disappear as he sat down. Issei heard someone running as it was getting closer. He looked back to see Rhea stop next to him and knelt to grab him and push his head into her chest. Thank you for dealing with that, Issei. She said as she wrapped her arms around him. Issei's body had gone to jello as he was in a happy place. I already feel better. Muffled words came out from him. Azazel walked back to Surziches and Michael. He saw that what remaining of the guards was cleaning up the bodies of the dead magicians. About your arm? Surziches asked as he saw that he cut it off. Don't worry about it. I had to cut it off, I'll have a new one soon. Azazel waved off any concern about his arm. I see. Surziches said, yet it is still my fault that a devil caused such an issue to begin with. Well, Vali betrayed us, yet nobody is perfect. That kid is a true monster. If we're all in agreement here, I must be returning to heaven soon to prepare for what is to come. Michael said as he watched a rose spring up from the ground near them and blood instantly. When the petals opened up, creating a giant magic circle, bodies started appearing of naked girls bound with thorny vines. As the bodies came out, one final figure popped out as well. Aphrodite came out sitting on top of the pile with one girl naked laying face down bound up. I've been trying to get in here for a while now. She hopped off her makeshift chair and smacked the ass of the girl she was sitting on as the vines tightened their grip. I take it as these idiots are part of whatever happened at your meeting. She asked, getting a sense of what happened. So what happened? Azazel asked. The group surrounded the house and tried to kill us. She looked back. The ones in blinds are still alive. I thought about sexually interrogating them for some information. But felt it was better off left to you guys. She stepped to the side and waved at them. I have to deal with things at home before the kids get back. Rose petals surrounded her and then fell to the ground as she was teleported away. I think I will never understand her. Michael said as he was looking away from the pile of naked and bound up girls. Don't, Azazel told him. If you do you might fall, that woman is weird. Issei takes after her. Azazel looked over to Surziches. I'm going to leave the cleanup duty to you and whatever of my men are left. He tried to shake his left arm at Surziches so he would get the picture. I have to deal with this and I think it's going to be an all-nighter. Surziches sent the pile of bodies away to be dealt with in the underworld. Michael walked over to Issei. You wish to speak with me? He asked. Issei looked up at Michael as he was still sitting on the ground with everyone near him. Yes, I did. Would it be possible to allow Asia and Zenobia to pray so they don't take damage? Issei stood up following his question. Michael was a bit surprised that his request wasn't selfish. He turned around to see Asia and Zenobia were surprised by his request. Even though you are now devils and knowing the truth, do you still believe? Michael asked the girls. Both of the girls nodded their heads. Even though I have left that life, it is hard for me to let it go. Zenobia replied, as did Asia. Right after I was raised in the church and it was all I had. Even if there is no Lord, I would still like to pray. Michael smiled hearing the answers. That's good to hear. It means quite a bit to hear that from the two of you even after what happened. When I return I will allow the two of you into the system. It should be fine having you two not receiving damage from prayer. Asia's eyes welled up with tears as she ran over to Issei and hugged him. Thank you, Ice. Zenobia felt something in her chest. It felt warm inside as it welled up, but she didn't know what it was. She spoke softly in his ear. Thank you for this. He wrapped an arm around her, hugging her as well. "It's fine, be yourself is all that you can do." Most of his words fell on deaf ears as she was losing herself. She felt her face twinge as her chest felt warm. Riaz saw how Zenobia was and smiled. She caught a case of feelings. Riaz thought as she watched them. After Michael concluded his business with Issei, he looked at Kiba. "After what happened, we will be more vigilant when it comes to projects. That will also extend to research into the swords you gave us, as we don't want to create a repeat incident." Kiba bowed his head. "Thank you. Your thanks is appreciated, however, it is something we should have done from the start. It was an error to believe that our followers could handle something of that nature and not go overboard. Yet it is also my fault for excluding such oversights, to begin with, to allow it to devolve to such a state." Michael walked back to Surzich's and Azazel. "I take it as we are in agreeance?" he asked them. "I do." Azazel said, "I agree as well." Surzich's said. With those words, the three great factions had agreed to make a change. A change for the better, a change that ends the countless bickering and bloodshed. A change that would make a difference for the children and beyond. The next day. Everybody was in the club room sitting on the couches, including Riaz. Azazel had taken Riaz's chair behind the desk. "From today forward I will be the advisor of the Occult Research Club," he said, wearing the same clothes from yesterday as they looked slept in. Riaz had her head sunk into her hands. "And why is that?" "Because I'm such a nice guy. That and all the ladies love me," he said. "Somehow I doubt that." Azazel got a small laugh out of that. "I was requested to take this job from Sona Sitri. And pray tell, why would she do such a thing?" Riaz was now confused as well as annoyed. "It falls from the chain of command. She did it because she was requested by Surzich's, and that's why I'm here." "How's the arm?" Issei asked as Azazel looked a bit more enthused with that question. "Besides researching sacred gears at Greiger, we do other things like prosthetics like this one." The tips of the fingers broke open as wires came out as they retracted back into the hand. "Never thought I would require one of these, but I can load it with laser beams, tiny missiles, anything needed to progress in the name of research." After he showed off his arm, he got serious. "The reason why I am here is to make sure you grow in the right direction. The way you use your powers will determine how the future is decided, and I will make sure that they are put to use for good. Right now the Cows Brigade is planning something, and we need everybody to be in tip-top shape." "Ooh," came from Gasper's box as the lid came down on it. And with a few words, "I think we lost all progress on him," Issei said as he watched the box. "Anyways, that's another problem in itself." Azazel looked to Kiba. "How long can you hold your balance breaker?" "Not much more than 1 hour." Kiba knew his limit surprisingly well. 60 minutes. "No, that's not good enough, you need to be able to use it for 3 days straight." He looked over to Issei. "What about you?" Issei shrugged his shoulders. "Don't know, never tried to just sit around in the armor. It's not fun to sleep in. Ares hit me once and knocking me out, but I still had my armor on, it felt weird." "Right. Drag. He was asking for a long shot, but he might as well try. He can hold it for a month, but the way he uses the power limits it." The voice came and went as fast as it could. "That would explain some things." He looked at Akeno. "Do you still hate your father, Akeno? He is the reason everything happened. I have no reason to forgive him." Her words were like venom. "I see, this isn't my place to deal with family matters." He looked back to the group. "Summer vacation is coming, and you all are going to train. Your gaps in power and how to use it needs work. But before we get to that." He pulled out a piece of paper and rolled it out, showing it to them. "By the order of Surzich's Lucifer, all the women are to move in with Issei." A grin crept upon his face as he watched them all. "What?" Riaz shouted out as Azazel handed her the order. "I suggest you girls get to packing," Azazel said as he teleported away. A few hours passed as Issei and Asia were at home waiting for the rest to move in. The doorbell rang as they all went over to the door to see who was the first one to arrive. Issei opened the door to see Akeno standing there, dressed in a slim pair of black jeans with a back see-through top that was connected to an undershirt. She set her bag down after she walked in and lunged for Issei, wrapping her arms around him, shoving her head into his chest. "Eyes," she purred out, "I'm here by your side to take care of your every desire." Lust laced every word she spoke, and Issei was no stranger. He reciprocated the hug as he moved his lips to her personal maid. Skimpy yet functional panties with a good French-made outfit. 24/7 access. Anything you want. Even naughty things. Issei kissed her on the lips, but Riaz had to assert dominance. She pulled Issei away from Akeno by grabbing a hold of shirt. "You're going to be staying in the other room," Riaz said as she looked at Akeno. Kaneko and Zenobia walked in the door as they were watching Riaz and Akeno argue over what's what. Issei moved over to Kaneko, who just gave him a stern look. "If you do anything to my stuff, I will kill you." She made her intentions clear about how she felt about this. Issei bent over slightly and gave her a small hug. "I wish you were more fluff than tough." When he let her go, he saw that Zenobia was following Asia up the stairs to take her to where she was sleeping. End of the part 8. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.